I've been an XP user for many years and I've used it way beyond its end of life. During that time, I've stumbled upon a random website which told me to open up WordPad, type in Q33NY, the supposed flight number of a plane that crashed into the World Trade Center, and finally change the font to Wingdings. The result was somehow shocking to look at, but a quick Google search revealed that such a flight number has never existed and was simply made up for the sake of generating attention. But then, all of a sudden, the almighty algorithm wanted me to watch a video called Bullshit the Facts. And this video told me to do the following. Step 1. Use Windows XP. Step 2. Create a new text file and open it with Notepad. Step 3. Type in Bullshit the Facts and save the document. Step 4. Close and reopen the file. Step 5. Find out that your text has just disappeared. My very first thought was, this must be a joke. And my second thought was, this must be a joke only a Microsoft employee could have pulled off. At this point I had to decide which side I wanted to be on. Do I want to assume that there is some kind of logical explanation for that behavior, or do I want to go straight for the conspiracy theory? Let's find out after the intro. Windows XP's development has officially started in January 2000 and it was destined to be the successor of Windows ME and Windows 2000. The final product got released to the public in October 2001. Just as the UI went from redesign to redesign, the marketing campaign also had to be slightly rewritten before release. Microsoft originally intended to use the slogan "Prepare to Fly", which would later turn out to be a bad idea considering a certain historical event that took place around that time. Some of you might assume that some random dude at Microsoft could have seen this as an opportunity to turn Notepad.exe into his personal stage for what he thinks of the president. So let's take some notes here. This would imply that someone had access to the source code and was somehow able to modify it without raising suspicion. Additionally, this change must have gone through QA without being noticed. And all of this must have happened in the course of a month. Well, what am I supposed to say? It sounds cool as a theory, I guess. So I've decided to dig deeper and do some research. When saving and reopening the file, it seems like the text is getting replaced with these rectangles. But when taking a closer look at the file using different editors, nothing has really disappeared. It can still be read by other programs such as Notepad++. So we can assume that Notepad.exe simply refuses to read the file as it is. Then I've wondered how older Microsoft operating systems would react to that particular combination of characters. So, does this confirm our theory that this bug was an immediate response to the 9/11 attacks? Well, not really. Even if that would be an XP exclusive bug, it must have been implemented way before 9/11. That's because Microsoft has started shipping its OS to a variety of manufacturers in August of 2001 already. From there, the finished product, including the required activation number, got leaked and was distributed by a group called Devil's Own. Some might argue that these early releases may not be affected and the so-called bug could have been added later. Well, in the name of science, I have actually used this particular leak from August of 2001 when making this particular video. As some of you might know, Microsoft had two separate development teams for their operating systems throughout the 90s. One team was responsible for creating end-consumer Windowses such as 95, 98 and ME that ran on top of MS-DOS. The other team was busy developing the Windows NT product line, which was aimed at professional users and businesses. As the NT architecture was the more stable and reliable one, it needed more resources than its DOS-based counterpart. Because of technological progress that allowed NT-based Windowses to run on consumer-grade hardware, the entire Windows 90X architecture has started to become unnecessary at the turn of the millennium, so they decided to get rid of it entirely and make NT the core component of their next mainstream operating system, and the result of that was Windows XP. So I've tried to recreate the problem across various Windows releases such as NT 3.1, NT 3.5, NT 4.0 and Windows 2000. Interesting. Very interesting. Interesting. Even more interesting. We can conclude that this bug must have been in existence since at least 1994, which means that there is no such thing as a 9/11 reference, which means that there must be some facts and logic behind all of that. And fortunately, Windows NT 3.5 gives us a hint about what is going on. It seems like Notepad tries to display the text file as Unicode. Just like any other type of file, a text file is nothing but a sequence of bytes. In order to display a text file, there needs to be some kind of standard that tells the editor how to encode these bytes into readable text. The most common encoding standards are ASCII and Unicode. ASCII, for example, just takes each single byte and translates it into a single character, which is quite simple. But the simplicity of this mechanism comes with a disadvantage. Because the value of a single byte ranges from 0 to 255, there are just 256 possible characters available. That might be okay for the Latin alphabet, but try to include Chinese and Japanese characters, for example, and you will simply run out of space in your encoding table. In contrast to ASCII, Unicode is an encoding standard that increases the variety of displayable characters by requiring more than one byte for each character. Unicode has many different substandards such as UTF-8, UTF-16BE and UTF-16LE. It's quite a rabbit hole to suck yourself into, and there are a lot of Indian guys on YouTube that can help you with that. Let me show you how both of these standards can conflict with each other. Let's create a file containing 2 bytes. One byte has a decimal value of 208 and the other one has a value of 174. ASCII would claim that these 2 bytes are 2 separate characters. In contrast, UTF-8 would say that these 2 bytes stand for some random Cyrillic character. When trying to load that 2-byte file, a text editor will now go through an existential crisis. Both representations are somehow valid, but now it has to pick the one that is more likely to make sense. And the exact same conflict occurs when trying to display bullshit the facts. According to ASCII, this byte stands for a lowercase b, this one for a lowercase u, this one for a lowercase s, and so on. But in this particular case, Notepad thinks that UTF-16LE would be a better choice, resulting in a sequence of random Chinese characters that can't even be displayed when using affected Windows versions.
必笨人磨甜头硬解萌。
When scrolling through leaked source material, we can see that Notepad used to perform that decision making by calling an API function called isTextUnicode. It is located in a Windows system file called advarby32.dll, which means that any programmer can utilize this function in their own software by simply referencing the system file. And guess what? It was introduced with NT 3.5, the first Windows OS known to have this encoding issue. According to an archived blog post from a deceased Microsoft employee, isTextUnicode was implemented when many programmers considered ASCII to be a de facto standard, while Unicode was nothing but a new and fancy way to waste memory. When being given a sequence of bytes, that function would try to determine the correct encoding by applying a range of different tests. And if all of these tests couldn't bear definite results, the algorithm would simply resort to guess the correct encoding, leaving some room for mistakes. Ironically, Windows Vista was the first Windows to get it right. Notepad.exe was modified to use an improved detection algorithm, but isTextUnicode, including all of its flaws, remained, as many other programs still rely on it. And I have written a tiny piece of code which does exactly that. It will try to create an ASCII text file containing our favorite sentence, import isTextUnicode from advarby32.dll, and finally ask that function for the correct encoding. As you might have guessed, it would always return true. And thanks to a friend of mine, I've found out that this piece of code can even be run under Windows 11, which means that isTextUnicode won't die that soon. Just like Notepad.exe, advarby32.dll was also subject to a source leak, which does not take much time to find. And when searching for source code that belongs to isTextUnicode, you are likely to stumble upon a file that was originally written in 1990. And to me, this is the most fascinating thing behind that story. Just imagine it's 1990. The Pentium processor didn't even exist yet, but Soviet Russia was still a thing. You are a Microsoft employee and instructed to write some gimmicky API function nobody's gonna give a shit about. You do as you are told, but 4 years later you will find out that your code has become an essential part of a business-grade operating system. Throughout the following 3 decades, this operating system would grow organically and result in products such as Windows XP, Windows 7 or Windows 10. And no matter what is gonna happen this century, your imperfect piece of code will continue to live on, rent-free inside ATMs, industrial devices, a teenager's gaming machine or some dictator's personal computer. Have a nice day.